All right, so in the previous video, I showed you the chart of Monero, and I asked you to find the 160 and the 80-day highs and lows using the same technique that I showed you in the previous video. So I'm going to solve this now for you. I'm not going to go through every step and explain each step in as much detail because that was the purpose of the previous video. Rather, the purpose of this video is I'm just going to show you how I found the 160-day highs or lows in this chart of Monero. This is how I do it myself when I'm looking at a new market for the first time. Again, I don't know where the highs and lows are in this chart. I mean, I can see them visually, but I've never done this myself. So I'm doing this for the first time. I am solving it just like you were supposed to before you watch this video. Without further ado, so let me bring up the 40-day moving average displaced backwards by 20 days. That is the 160-day filter. And I'm just going to go through it just like I did the previous exercise. So again, just using black arrows to highlight the highs and lows in the filter. And you can see how easy this is. Just highlighting highs and lows. This one here, again, it looks kind of sideways. So I'm going to opt to highlight this high here and this low here. There's another high here, low, another high, low. There we go. Next, I have to do the 80-day cycle. Hide black line, bring up blue line. Change the arrow color. A little less thick to highlight the fact that this is a smaller cycle. And off we go. High, low, low, high, low, high. This here, I'm just gonna call it a single low right here. You could have argued that there's a high here and a low here. It's not quite right to me, so I'm just gonna delete it. Part of the reason I'm showing you how I do these myself is because, yeah, sometimes you can't tell whether it's, even if you're using a filter, even though you're using a filter, there's still some noise in the filter. So you have to make a decision on whether or not you wanna highlight a cycle. In this case, I'm just not gonna do it because it's a little too short. This was good enough. Just highlighting highs and lows on this filter. Again, we have this little, this is kind of looks like Bitcoin too. In this time period, it went sideways and it moves up a little. To me, this does look like a cycle. If it didn't for you, that's okay. But for me, it does. So there you go. This one's a little, not really. I'm not gonna call that a low. There we go. Now, what I'm seeing just off the top of my head here, I'm seeing a lot of overlap between the 160-day cycles that I highlighted and the 80-day cycle. So I'm gonna have to do a lot of cleaning because I'm seeing a lot of supposed 160-day cycles that are actually made up of a single 80-day cycle. So I'm gonna have to do a little cleanup. And this is partly why I picked this chart for you. So I figured this is the hardest thing to understand. So as I'm going to see now, after I line up all the arrows, go back to the beginning, then I'm going to have to do a little bit of cleaning on this chart, or what I call forcing synchronicity. I'm forcing each 160-day cycle to be made up of at least 2 80-day cycles. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Let's line these up. All right, so I have these arrows here, and I'm gonna hide the filter. I don't need to see this filter anymore. Lining up the arrows with the lows, actual highs and lows in the price action. Now you can do it this way. I've seen other people do it this way. They have them vertically lined up, and they do it like this. So the larger cycle is below the smaller cycle. I've seen people do it like this. I don't see the need, personally. So, but if it helps you, hey, go for it. In this case, let me just do at least one. See what this technique looks like. So you can see they line them up vertically like this. If you're gonna highlight 3, 4, I've seen people do up to 5 cycles. Yeah, you would probably have to do it this way. To me, it's just a little slower, and I rarely highlight more than 3 cycles. In fact, I rarely highlight more than 2. So for me, there's no need. Again, lining up. Remember, the reason I'm lining up these arrows with the price actions, the filter gets me close to the real lows. Rather, a low in the filter is going to get me close to a real low in the price action or a high, but it's not going to be exact. So I always have to, there is no skipping this step. You need to make sure they're lined up. In future lessons, I'm also going to show you how you can create a spreadsheet so you don't have to clutter your chart. I have the advantage of having this entire model fully automated in computer code. So I actually have these spreadsheets produced for me rather, just automatically. But you don't have to. I didn't have that computer model for years, and I did just fine. In fact, sometimes the computer model makes it a little more difficult. There's nothing like the human eye for finding cycle highs and lows. Again, we just keep lining up. This step is crucial because you want to highlight the actual turning points. Look at this one. This one's just all the way out there in the middle of nowhere. It is clearly pointing to this level. Look at it this way. That's the high. They don't have to point to the exact turning point either. I mean, it's just a ballpark. Again, the idea here is for you to notice you don't have to be so rigorous. You can see that I lined up all of these arrows quite nicely. Okay, so now let's force synchronicity. Let's make sure that for every black arrow, there's 2 of the blue arrows. Now, you may have noticed there's actually 3. This black arrow here, 2, and there's 3 blue arrows. I'm not counting the first one, just so you know. So I start here on the black arrow, and I count 1, 2 blue arrows for the next black arrow. In the beginning here, we start with this black arrow, and the next blue arrow is also a black arrow. That can't be. I'm basically saying the same thing as before. I mean, I am saying this 80-day cycle is also a 160-day cycle. That cannot be. Again, that violates the principle of synchronicity. So I simply need to eliminate this low. Something that I didn't highlight in the previous lesson is that once you eliminate a low, you're going to be left with 2 highs. This is quite easy. You just eliminate the lower of these 2 highs. In this case, I have this one, and I have this one. This one, let's call it high number 1. High number 1 is higher, pardon the pun, than high number 2. Therefore, high number 2 is going to go. And now we have 2 80-day cycles, actually 3. See, I'm doing this live, just as you did it, hopefully before watching this video. There we go. So now I went from having a 160-day cycle made up of a single 80-day cycle to a large 160-day cycle made up of 3 80-day cycles. And this is simply by forcing synchronicity. Remember, for every black line, for every black arrow highlighting a low, I need 2, at least 2 blue arrows. If I have 3, 4, or 5, that's okay. I've never seen more than 3, to be honest, but you may in other markets. So just going through this, 1 black arrow, 1, 2, that's good. Black arrow, 1, 2, black arrow here, and the next black arrow is also a blue arrow. That cannot be, so let's get rid of this. We get rid of that, and we're left again with two highs. There's one high here. There's another high here. Again, every time you eliminate a low, you're going to be left with two highs. So you have to also eliminate the lower of those two highs. I'm not going to go through that entire process again. You get the point. And now we're left with, I'm just doing this to highlight that after eliminating that black arrow, I am left with two 80-day cycles that make up a larger 160-day cycle. And that's it. That's the end of the exercise. Don't worry if this is not exactly how you solve this. Again, unless you're using a computer model like I use for my own work, there's going to be some variation between different cycles analysts. Now, there shouldn't be a huge difference from how I did it here. It should be roughly the same, and it doesn't have to be an exact 100% match. That's not really how it works. That's not really what we're going for here. I am teaching you a simple, fast, and quick method for finding cycle highs and lows. You can apply the same techniques for finding cycles up to 4, 5, 8 years in duration. These are the same techniques. Find a filter, you highlight highs and lows with the arrow, you use other filters for other cycles, and then you make sure that each cycle is made up of at least more than one smaller cycle. Once you do that, you have your full cycle picture done for you. The heavy lifting was done by the filters. It is really just the filters. Notice that I haven't counted time once. I didn't count the number of days. I don't really know how long these cycles are. It doesn't really matter. Remember the principle of nominality. Nominality states all asset classes have the same cycle durations. That means I don't actually have to go in here to look at this chart, in this case, Monero, and try to figure out what the cycles are. I know it's an 80-day cycle, 160-day cycle, there's a 40-day cycle, a 20-day cycle. So all I have to do is find the filters, apply the filters, highlight the highs and lows, and I just move on to the next cycle. Now in future lessons, we are going to count time, because sometimes you might want to know what has the actual duration of this 80-day cycle been in the past, let's say 4 or 5 cycles. Remember principle of variation. Cycle durations can and do vary, and they can vary significantly. So sometimes there's some value to trying to find out what the actual cycle durations are looking at in the market of your choice. But for the most part, if you're just trying to find where the cycle highs and lows are, that part is easy. You just let the filters do the heavy lifting for you, and you don't have to worry about the rest. Make sure you know how filters work, because in the next lesson, in lesson 3, we're actually going to be using those filters, or the principle behind those filters, to find out other indicators that are going to make future time projections possible. And for that, you need to have a solid grasp on how to use filters. So I'll see you in the next one.